is your friendly caregiving reminder that protecting your parents from the consequences of their own decisions is not caregiving, it's enabling. Let me say that again. Protecting your parents from the consequences of their own decisions is not caregiving, it is enabling.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Feeling Full and Finally Free, a caregiver's healing journey. I'm Jeanette Yates, and today we're talking about that clip I posted on TikTok and continuing our conversation that it started in the comments. We'll discuss codependency and how it can potentially show up in our caregiving. And I'll be giving more context to explain the difference between healthy acts of care and those that can actually potentially be enabling and harmful to our loved ones and us. Let's dive into how we can support our loved ones in ways that empower them rather than undermine their independence and well-being as well as ours. Our journey through caregiving can often blur the lines between healthy support and enabling harmful habits. Understanding these differences is crucial to creating a truly supportive environment. But first things first, here's what we are not talking about today. In my social media post, I said, protecting our parents from the consequences of their poor choices is not caregiving, it's enabling. To be clear, which admittedly I was not in that original post, I was not speaking of the care we give our parents when they have dementia or when they are cognitively or mentally impaired, or when they have been scammed or otherwise have experienced some sort of circumstance beyond their control. And that may have caused them hardship. That is not what I'm talking about today. What we are talking about today is the idea of codependency and one of the most common ways it creeps into our caregiving, and that is our enabling behaviors. As we discussed in last week's episode, codependency refers to an imbalanced relationship pattern where one person assumes the responsibility for meeting another person's needs. Now, so far, that sounds exactly like caregiving to me, but here's the rest of the definition. Codependency refers to an imbalanced relationship pattern where one person assumes the responsibility for meeting another person's needs to the exclusion of acknowledging their own needs or feelings. That second part is really what we're talking about here as we talk about codependency today. As a caregiver myself, and in many conversations with caregivers over the years, I see how easy it is to think about that whole definition as caregiving, especially when caregiving is considered so selfless. So excluding our own needs or putting them off until is part of the deal, right? No, that is not right. And that's why I am talking about this today, and we'll keep talking about it after today. So let's get into it. We know what codependency is in theory, but what does it look like when we are actually supposed to be protecting and caring for our loved ones? One more reminder, this is not about caring for someone with dementia. I am speaking to those of you who are caring for aging parents and trying to figure out when and how to step in and when to step away. So what does it look like? First, let's talk about what healthy caregiving looks like, especially when you are just starting to give extra attention and care to your parents. It's important to set and respect your boundaries and those of your loved ones. This ensures that caregiving relationship remains healthy and mutual. As long as your parents still have the ability to make their own decisions, like they haven't been declared incapable of doing so, it is important to let them, even if you disagree with their choices. This encourages independence, which many aging parents are desperately trying to hold on to. You can make suggestions, but allow them to make their own decisions and perform tasks independently when possible. It is also okay to listen to and show empathy with your parents without jumping in to solve every single problem, especially those that are beyond your control. This is particularly important when parents want you to fix the unfixable problems. One of the ways that this showed up in my own caregiving journey with my mother was in the area of my mom's social life. As her world got smaller and smaller, as she became less and less able to get out of her home and engage in social activities, it became more and more of something that I was aware of, and I started trying to fix for her. I recognized her isolation, and I recognized that not many people were coming to visit. She did have some people coming, but just fewer and fewer people came. And, when you've been sick for decades, it's not like that short-term sickness when people show up, right? This is years and years and years. So as her social life became smaller and smaller and smaller, fewer and fewer opportunities for her to leave the house, plus fewer and fewer people coming, I could really so easily pick up the weight of becoming her social coordinator. And I tried to spend as much time with her as possible. But again, it becomes overwhelming when it feels like it's all on me as her daughter, as her caregiver, to make sure that she's not alone. She's not lonely. And I really had to take a step back. And while I could empathize with her, I couldn't be her companion all the time. I had children of my own and friends and relationships that I was trying to foster. So I think, one of the things that was really important for us to do is for me to, of course, sit with her and comfort her, and offer suggestions to her, but I just couldn't be the social coordinator, the one that provided all the social interaction either. Now, this is also something I hear from a lot of caregivers whose loved ones are in assisted living facilities. I mean, I cannot tell you how often I hear, how can I get my loved one to participate in the activities? They just sit in their room all day and they don't do anything, and it's driving me nuts. And the hard truth is, it is up to them. They are presented with opportunities, the staff, and I'm assuming that everybody's doing what they're supposed to, right? Of course, that's one caveat here. The staff is encouraging your loved one to get out. Perhaps, you've even tried to attend a social session with them, but they want you to attend all of the social sessions with them. They're like, I'll go if you go. Well, that just is not feasible and not sustainable. So it is okay to listen to them and, encourage them. Trying to take over that is just something that's not sustainable for you. And while that may not be, quote, enabling, it's definitely something that they have control over. They can go to the activity. They can ask, for assistance, or maybe you can even ask for someone to sit with them because they need a little bit of extra attention, but it doesn't have to be you all the time. Just know that offering a listening ear and emotional comfort without taking over and making decisions is perfectly appropriate, especially in a case like that. If they don't want to, that's okay. Some people are really content to just sit in their room and be by themselves. And if that's what they want to do, and again, they're in their right mind, they can cognitively understand the choice they're making, then yes, let them just make that decision. You can let that go. That is not something you have to wear on your shoulders. Healthy caregiving allows us to understand that there is a difference between who our loved one is and who we are. The author, Melody Beatty, author of Codependent No More, and many other books about codependency, says it best. This is kind of a long quote, but it's worth reading. Many of the people I've worked with in family groups have been so obsessed with the people that they care about. When I asked them what they were feeling, they told me what the other person was feeling. When I asked what they did, they told me what the other person had done. Their entire focus was on someone or something other than themselves. Some of them had spent years of their lives doing this, worrying about, reacting to, and trying to control another human being. They were shells, sometimes almost invisible shells of people. Their energy was depleted, directed at someone else. They couldn't tell me what they were feeling because they didn't know. Their focus was not on themselves. And again, that quote was from Melody Beatty, of the author of Codependent No More. Now, my question to you is, does any of that sound familiar? If it does, that could be codependency creeping into your caregiving, and you could be falling into enabling behaviors. Now, of course, I'm not diagnosing anybody with codependency. As a matter of fact, many codependency experts will tell you this is something you just have to learn about and then be able to identify. Of course, if you have a therapist, sometimes they can help you with that. But lots of times it's about looking at why we're doing things and how we are doing things and some of the things that we are trying to do to decide whether we're in a codependent situation and doing enabling behaviors. So let's talk a little bit more about how do we know when we're being just good caregivers or if we're slipping into enabling. And really the truth is it depends. Each relationship is different. And again, it's not so much about the behaviors, but why you're doing them. So here are some of the things that you can look out for as a caregiver for an aging parent. So I'm going to go through some of this stuff and we can dive deeper into it. So the first thing is if you're ignoring harmful behaviors, turning a blind eye to behaviors that could be detrimental to their well-being. Now, I know you might be saying, wait, so am I supposed to step in here or not? Is it enabling to step in if they're doing something harmful, or is it enabling not to step in? I think the distinction lies here in something more nuanced. If your aging parent is in full knowledge of how their behavior is harmful and chooses to do it anyway, you do not want to ignore it, but you also must understand that it's their choice to continue to do that or not do something. And you can set boundaries about how you will respond and what you will do and not do, but you cannot change their behavior. Now, one caveat here, especially for those of us who are caregivers, and this is where it gets tricky because somebody can start out as an aging parent with full faculties and then move into a place where they are not as cognitively able to make decisions. If you're watching this and you are noticing perhaps some changes in their cognitive ability, of course, you may have to get a medical professional or Department of Motor Vehicles. This is another area where sometimes people are told they shouldn't drive and they drive anyway. And there's a lot of manipulation that goes around. Should we hide the keys? Should we take gas out of the car? Should we do all this kind of stuff? That is playing around instead of just getting to the heart of the issue. And we'll talk more about that here in a minute. But know that sometimes you do have to have professionals step in if you are worried about the safety of your loved one and you do not feel that they are making a decision with full knowledge and understanding of the consequences. But if they are, then it's their decision. You make suggestions, they make decisions. Now, another area where sometimes codependency creeps up in caregiving is also if we're doing everything for them, even when they are capable of doing it for themselves, that can stifle their independence. Now, a lot of times parents don't want your help when they need it, but other times it's just easier if you do it. Have you ever felt like that? Just let me do it. It doesn't take as long. It's not as messy, whatever. But when we do that, we are again pulling away at that independence that they are craving, that they are holding onto. And as long as we can allow them to keep what independence they can, then it doesn't hurt so much when we're taking away parts of their independence that they are losing, right? So just know that, again, that's another place that I don't know when it's going to be right for you or wrong for you, but just pay attention to that and allow them to have as much of their independence for as long as they can, even if in some areas they are not independent and other areas they can be. All right. And then this is a biggie, and this is probably the biggest one that we're dealing with when it comes to caregiving: avoiding difficult conversations, shying away from the necessary but uncomfortable discussions about their behaviors or their needs is enabling or can be enabling. I led a whole workshop on this because this is something that was one of my biggest traps in caregiving. This is the area where I was the most codependent. I was not willing to have the important, hard conversation until I was. And so I did a whole workshop about this. I'm not going to spend too much time on it here, but you can head to the show notes and grab the workshop there. I will drop the link in the show notes so that you can watch that. But if you are doing things that you don't want to do, that they could be doing themselves, or that help them avoid the natural consequences of their choices, this can be a sign of enabling. Again, it's something that is very nuanced. We want to at least take a look at it and see what's going on there. And again, if you know you have to have a hard conversation, but you just don't know how to start it, and you just don't know if you can deal with it, my workshop calling Say No and Mean It Without Being Mean, it's all about having hard conversations and setting boundaries. Please head to the show notes and grab that workshop. All right, so another thing that we might be doing that seems like it's helping, but it's harming, is supporting unhealthy habits. So this is another fine line, because allowing or encouraging habits that harm their health can be something that's iffy, and we don't want to do that. However, again, they also make their own choices. One of the things that I think is important here, so again, if they're on their own, they're living in their own home and they're eating the way they're not supposed to, or they're not exercising enough or whatever, that is something you can't control really. If somebody is in your home, of course, you have a little bit more say about what goes on in your home. So just know that, and know a lot of people are like, very hesitant to set boundaries even within their own home with their parents, but it's your home and you can do that. So again, boundaries we're going to have a whole episode about boundaries next week, but just know that, you can not maybe control that unhealthy habit, but you also don't have to support it. Okay, so that's the fine line there. There's a lot of fine lines in codependency and caregiving. Now, one of the ways that helped me to really understand, is this a place where I'm supposed to help or not supposed to help, or where's the line I need to draw here? I would ask these questions. So I'm going to share these questions with you. These are 4 questions that I use and that have been recommended by professionals in the psychology and codependency space to try to help you figure out, are you enabling? Are you having a healthy relationship with somebody? All right. Question number 1. Am I doing this to Question number 1. Am I doing this to try to avoid conflict, discomfort, or negative reaction from my loved ones? In other words, does this thing that I'm doing feel like it isn't a choice at all? Question number 2. Am I making excuses or hiding the reality from my loved ones or their medical professionals? Question number 3. Are my own needs, finances, health, career, or other family relationships suffering because of what I'm doing here? And then this last one is one that I ask all the time. Am I walking on eggshells, feeling like I'm running on empty, or that I'm out of control of my own life? These are just a few tips I've learned as I have examined my own codependent tendencies in caregiving and other areas of my life. We'll keep the conversation going in the Self-Caregiver Facebook group this week and continue exploring how to create healthy caregiving relationships next week when we do a deep dive into the art of boundary setting with our aging parents. Remember, healthy caregiving empowers your loved ones, while enabling can hinder their well-being. And before we wrap up today, I want to remind you all about our summer book club. If you're interested in knowing more about codependency, how to break free from it, then you are definitely going to want to join the Summer Book Club. We start on June 25th. We'll be reading Melody Beatty's The New Codependency together, which ties perfectly into our discussions. For more information and to sign up, check the show notes or come see me on Instagram at The Self-Caregiver. Just DM me and I will send you the link. Thank you for joining me today. Stay tuned for more insightful episodes of Feeling Full and Finally Free. Take care, and let's continue to strive for balance and fulfillment in our caregiving journeys. If you like this episode, please do me a favor and leave a 5-star review. Your input matters and helps other people find these episodes so that they can build strong and healthy caregiving relationships with their family members as well.